Welcome back. So, while I was in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, as I said before, went to the Flight into Egypt Black Artists and Ancient Egyptians exhibit. This is one of the rooms in the exhibit where you have magazines on the wall, chairs to sit on, and you can read an article. And if you have people to talk to, you can discuss it if you want to. So, while I was in there, so the magazines there on the wall is the Crisis magazine. So the Crisis is the official magazine of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP. It was founded in 1910 by our great and beloved W.E.B. Du Bois and Oswald Garrison Villard. And the article I chose, just saw it there, it says Parents and Children. So I primarily agreed with the first paragraph. This is how it reads. As our children are today, so will be our race a generation in the future. The children of today will be the men and women, the fathers and mothers, and teachers and breadwinners then. What kind of men and women, what kind of parents and teachers and breadwinners will they be? That depends upon what the men and women of today are doing, or what they're not doing will determine the character and destiny of those children. And the character and conduct of succeeding generation reaps the harvest. No generation has yet in the history of the world escaped the operations of the law of cause and effect. So basically, especially in an age where influencers and celebrities and all kinds of people have an impact on people, I totally agree with this paragraph. It says the behavior of adults and parents are the most important factor in the future of our children and the race. And of course, there are rare occasions when other factors intervene, such as disease and natural disasters. But as people try to gain influence over children, through different ways, they are very impactful. So here's the second paragraph. What then we make of our children today, an everlasting law will make of our race a generation hence. If we strive earnestly to make them Puritan in morals, German in efficiency, and English in love of liberty, there'll be no baffling Negro problem a generation hence. For these children of ours will beat all the evil forces in America which are fighting against the race, and will win their children a secure place in the sun. So I agree with some of what his desire to make sure we as a people succeed and thrive. So that's totally down. But I don't agree with other things. Like, for example, finding role models outside of the Black community. I do not have an issue with seeing positive aspects of other cultures, such as Puritans, Germans, and English. If these are positive things, but some of them are delusion based on internalized white supremacy. For example, the writer calls the English lover of liberty, when Britain was one of the greatest colonizers and enslavers of humanity. With all due respect, I must call that BS. Further, our failure to find positive examples in our Black cultural heritage is proof that we've been colonized and poisoned by internalized racism. The next issue I have is victim blaming, not addressing the systemic aspect of the breakdown of the Black family. There has never been a Negro or a Black problem in the U.S. There has always, and up until today, been an issue of oppression and white supremacy. When we call it a Negro problem, that's victim blaming. When our ancestors were in Africa, they had 99 problems, but defective family structure was not one of them. Taking responsibility for the family and community were strengths of African culture, and on many places on the continent to this day, this continues to be the case. to successfully enslave the Africans that were taken over here, our ancestors, the enslavers had to intentionally destroy their strong cultural bonds. They would take away their language. They would force them to breed and not prohibit them from getting married. These were all things that were natural to them. But we do not have to look to Africa to build our collective positive Black identity around parents. Let me provide some of the enslaved examples from enslaved ancestors who ran away from upstate New York, as well as from a mixed race family. The photo you have here in the, not at this current slide, but we have here that we show of a mixed race family. And my theory is that you cannot make a slave out of men and women. No one can make you a slave. That's why we use the term enslaved. Enslaved. This is something someone is doing to you, but you cannot become a slave unless you accept the conditions. So here are examples of our ancestors who refused to become slaves. Jack, 36, and Jin, 35, ran away with their unnamed child. Abram called Mal his wife, and both ran away with 2 children, a boy 3 years old and a daughter 5 months old. Charity, a 19-year-old, she ran away with her 2-year-old son Peter with the intention of going back to where her family resided. The enslaver, when he was trying to capture Ishmael, he said Ishmael was the father of the 2 children he left with, a boy 13 and another boy 6. Even the enslaver had to admit this familial connection. This man would not run away without his own children. Then finally, we have the mixed race family in the photo. It shows a woman who had children from her Black husband, as well as being raped, those that were the product of the rape of her by her enslaver. And that man, excuse me, I'd call him a king, is depicted proudly standing with all his family. Can you believe the strength of character it takes for that? To know, to look on your oppressor's child created in your wife's body and to still stand with that takes a level of courage that most people today don't have. And which brings me to my final point. This might be a little offensive for some of us to hear, that today the influencers, the people we look up to, some of us adults, and not just celebrities on big stages, but everybody in every era, you're influencing someone. There are people looking at you. And this might be offensive to hear, as I said, but some of us live more like slaves now than our ancestors did, because we have internalized the socialization of our enslavers. For example, in Jamaica, there's still men who say things like they breed a woman. That means they're willingly doing what our enslaved ancestors were forced to do. They were forced to sleep with each other just to create children without having a loving connection. And generally, there are Black men actively preying on Black women like their enslavers did. There are people who worship the masses and the masses' ways. Yeah, we're more slaves now than our ancestors were.